That day, as the police department received an important report from an archaeological institute, they quickly arrived at the place. Mr. King, the head of the research team, together with his subordinates, were there to welcome them. Mr. King expressed his gratitude towards the investigation team led by Officer Chow. "Thank you for your arrival here, Mr. Chow." Officer Chow asked Mr. King about the mysterious disappearance of the dead body, as he demanded him to tell everything he knew about it. Mr. King said the ancient mummy they had previously found suddenly disappeared last night, 3 days before his excavation team had found an ancient tomb in the mountain. The tomb was located deep in the forest and was discovered by some hunters who immediately reported about it. To avoid damaging the objects which were buried with the tomb, Mr. King asked his subordinates to carefully remove them. As the coffin was finally carried out of the grave, Mr. King stared at it in amazement. The coffin was covered with an extremely fine paint. According to Mr. King, the paint was created way back to the Qing dynasty. Having years of experience in this field, Mr. King carefully inspected the outside of the coffin before removing its lid, as he wanted to make sure there was no toxic gases bottled up inside it.
Wow.
Everyone was in utter shock to see what was inside the coffin. It was a dead body that was still intact, dressed in a Qing dynasty costume. But the horrifying thing here was that the body had a wooden beam in the middle of its chest. One of the workers blurted out that the body was that of a living dead, while another guy claimed the corpse was of an older religious group that created the living dead. Both theories of the workers made sense to Mr. King, as he believed the coffin had something unusual in it. One of the workers also added that there must be something sinister going on with the corpse since it was pierced with a wooden beam. Mr. King felt worried as he gazed at the corpse. Part of it was because he had looked up lots of information about ancient graves before. The worker told Mr. King about the story he'd heard before that the dead would awake if one removed the wooden beam out of it. Mr. King pointed at the corpse, telling others to look at its teeth. How terrifying. There were sprouted fangs inside its mouth, which meant that it had gone to the final stage of transforming into a demon. It would be an absolute horror if the corpse awoke from the dead. It would definitely bring calamity to humanity, as those who got bitten by it would become zombies instantly. The director of the Archaeological Institute slowly approached from behind, laughing loudly as he said their theories were utter nonsense. The man didn't believe in the existence of zombies in real life. He yelled at the workers, then walked closer to the corpse. The director then pulled out the wooden beam out of the dead body, then told the workers to bring it back to the institute so he could get it to the museum for display a week later. The excavation team brought the coffin and the corpse back to the institute afterwards. But last night, someone had broken into the place and stole the body. Mr. King accompanied Officer Chow to the room where he kept the dead body. The other officers started investigating the scene carefully. The only evidence they could find was an odd-looking handprint left on the door. Officer Chow asked Officer Ping to give him an investigation report. Officer Ping then pointed out something bizarre about the incident, as based on what they had found at the scene, it looked like the corpse had left the place on its own. Chow was surprised to hear it, as he found it too unbelievable. Indeed, there were no signs indicating an intruder breaking into the room. As they were heading back to the police station, Chow quickly went to see his boss Lu to report to him about the incident.
"What did you just tell me? That the corpse had awakened from the death and left on its own?"
Mr. Lu said. Lu asked Chow if he had fully investigated the scene. But Chow reaffirmed his belief to his boss that the dead body had indeed maneuvered. Later that afternoon, while Chow was analyzing the details he had about the incident, suddenly an officer came in informing about a murder taking place, and Chow was required to arrive at the scene. Chow asked the officer what had happened. The officer told him the murder took place early this afternoon at a market located in the suburb. A woman was approached by a strange man as she turned to see him. She was terrified by the look on his face. The man looked like a psycho. His eyes were bloodshot. Mouth was wide open, revealing the fangs as he unexpectedly attacked her. The man rushed to her with a tremendous force. He bit the woman by her neck as he slowly sucked blood out of it, which looked just like a bloodthirsty monster. After killing the woman, the man continued to chase after others, causing them to frantically run away. Now, as the police had arrived on the scene, the man was seen completely transformed into a zombie. As the cops fired shots at him, he let out an aggressive growl, then collapsed on the ground. Now everyone could clearly see the sharp fangs bearing out and his red eyes. Officer Chow realized this place was near to the Archaeological Institute, which aroused his suspicions about the mysterious disappearance of the corpse inside the ancient coffin. Chow was in panic to see the scene appearing before his eyes. There were around 5 dead bodies laying on the ground. Chow ordered his subordinates to conduct an extensive investigation into the murder case while performing an autopsy on the dead bodies. The following day at the police station, a tense atmosphere prevailed in the room. Mr. Liu was furious as the situation seemingly got out of control.
God damn it! These journalists are a bunch of fools for spreading the news of zombies killing people!
The article stirred up rumors that the corpse had killed countless people, which struck terror into the people as no one dared to go outside. Mr. Liu lit a cigarette to calm himself down, then asked about the investigative process. Officer Chow told him that they were waiting for the results of the autopsy. Mr. Liu ordered Chow to go to the forensic laboratory to hurry them up, as this murder case needed to be solved as soon as possible. If the process took any longer, social chaos would be sure to break out. Officer Chow followed his boss's order. He hurriedly went to the laboratory as the results of the autopsy had also come out. Inside the lab, the forensic pathologists were working tirelessly to speed up the investigative process, thus avoiding the situation from getting worse. As soon as Officer Chow asked him about the examination results, one of the doctors said that he would be amazed by what they found. The doctor showed him documents of the autopsy results. Chow expressed sheer amazement as he inspected the files. The pathologist also added they had discovered a fact that all the dead bodies carried rabies virus in their blood cells. But the odd thing was, the virus had mutated and become much more complex, hence taking more time for the doctors to examine it thoroughly. One thing about the corpses that terrified them was that they all had bite marks left on their necks, which totally confused them. Officer Chow thanked the doctor, then said farewell to him as he brought the documents back to his superiors. A month later, as the investigation seemingly reached a dead end with no new information to be found, more victims claimed by the mysterious murderer had spread panic in the police station. Mr. Liu expressed his anger as he ordered everyone to put all efforts into solving the murder case. Meanwhile, people were advised to wear masks in order to protect themselves from the strange virus, as the press had made the situation become more serious. That afternoon, at the police station, as everyone was having a meal talking about the murder case, Officer Ping said that he had just received a report from a civilian on the sudden appearance of rabid dogs in town. Many people were bitten. The situation worsened as the dogs lived in the area with those that had rabies all ended up being infected. Chow underestimated the situation, as dogs carrying rabies wasn't something too abnormal to him. But Ping told him that the serious problem here was lots of people having been bitten by the rabid animals, which came as a surprise to Chow. Normally, dogs with rabies would die after they bit someone, but these ones were different as they still survived while becoming stronger and ferocious. Chow got up, told everyone to move to the area immediately as no delay could be tolerated. Chow and Ping skipped their lunch. They hurriedly set out to the area that was invaded with rabid dogs. The car stopped in a suburban town. There was no one spotted at the scene, which meant that they must have evacuated. Ping felt a bit of insecurity as the place was filled with utter silence. Sensing something dangerous, Chow told his teammates to be careful. No sooner had Chow gotten out of the car than he heard strange noises. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a dog came into his sight. Chow was stunned to see the thing appearing before his eyes. The dog with the bloody mouth and bloodshot eyes was growling aggressively. It was infected. By the look of the dog, Chow could tell that it wasn't carrying normal rabies. In just a blink of an eye, the dog rushed to Chow. Chow reflexively rose his arms to defend himself from the attack. Blood was splashed as the dog bit him. As Ping witnessed Chow struggling with the ferocious dog, he immediately got out of the car to assist his friend. The man pulled out his gun, intending to take down the dog if necessary. Chow quickly hit the dog with a hammer, which made it jump backwards. However, shortly after that, the dog got up. It seemed like the hammer hit didn't do any harm to it. The bloodshot eyes of the dog, together with its aggressive look, gave Ping a firm impression that it had been infected. The dog was almost like an immortal, as a hammer hit it on the head would make one faint easily, let alone get up and attack. Ping asked Chow if he should shoot at the dog. Since the situation going in this town was more dangerous than Chow thought, he suggested returning for more reinforcements. However, as soon as Ping went back into the car to start the engine, he was shocked by what he saw. "Officer Chow, you need to see this!" Ping yelled loudly. Behind them now, many other dogs slowly came out. The officers were surrounded by the scary, aggressive dogs. Now it was impossible for them to return. Chow suggested to climbing on the roof, as it was the best thing they could do under the circumstances. He pointed at a high wall and then told Ping to run towards it as soon as he gave a signal. The two of them ran headlong to the wall. From behind them, the ferocious dogs were growling angrily, chasing after them. Chow and Ping made a high jump for the wall. However, both of them froze as they witnessed a horrific scene behind the wall. There were dead bodies on the ground, while some people were seen standing in a bizarre manner. All of a sudden they turned around, looking creepy as their mouths were covered with blood and their eyes were lifeless. The creepy looking people suddenly rushed towards the two policemen. Chow and Ping was frightened. These people were just as crazy as those rabid dogs. It seemed like the whole town had been infected with the virus. In a moment of carelessness, Ping almost slipped down, but thankfully Chow was able to grab him in time. The officers were temporarily safe as they stood on the high wall. However, it was a serious dilemma for the two as they were surrounded by a pack of aggressive dogs and a group of crazy people who wanted to eat them alive. Walking along the wall, the two managed to get to the roof. Now, as they were standing on a higher spot, they realized the situation had become worse than they thought. There was nowhere else for them to escape. The whole place was filled with infected people. They were moving like dead people, but somehow behaved threateningly. Realizing the extreme danger of the strange virus, as it had caused everyone in town to turn, Officer Chow suggested finding a way to escape and call for reinforcements. Unexpectedly at that moment, the two heard someone calling them. There was a woman and a little girl waving for help. It looked like they hadn't been infected. Chow told Ping to cover him from above as he came down to save the woman and child. Without a bit of hesitation, Chow climbed down and went to save the two. The woman burst into tears as she told the officer that everyone in town had gone crazy. She and her daughter had been trapped here for 2 days. Then Chow helped the woman and her daughter climb onto the roof. The situation became extremely dangerous as noises of doors banging were growing louder. It seemed like the aggressive monsters were about to get inside. The door bar seemingly couldn't hold any longer as the monsters kept screaming and banging, which attracted more of them to the place. Officer Chow hurriedly pushed the woman upwards to the roof. All of a sudden, Ping yelled loudly. He told Chow to climb up quickly as the monsters were about to enter. Chow gazed at the door. He instantly got frightened as the door bar was about to break. In just a moment, the door was bursting open as the infected rushed towards Chow. The monsters were fast and agile. They also had long canines, which made them look extremely ferocious. Realizing it was too late to keep climbing, Chow felt a surge of panic. The group of crazy people frantically attacked him. Chow instantly knocked down a guy from behind with his elbow. As he was surrounded by these ferocious madmen, he kept throwing punches at them. However, these people no longer felt pain as they stood up immediately and continued to attack Chow. Chow needed to get out of his mess quickly. As the right moment had come, he quickly jumped onto the wall. He tried his best to climb while the crazy people were underneath him, aggressively rushing towards him. One of them grabbed Chow's leg. From above, Ping was grabbing Chow as he tried his best to pull the man up. As the monster clung onto Chow's leg, he was injured as blood spilled out the moment he pulled up his leg. Chow breathed shallowly. What a narrow escape it was. These people were so strong and ferocious. Chow suggested that they needed to leave this place before it was overrun with zombies. The two policemen led the woman and her daughter to a safer shelter. They stopped at the terrace as it looked quite safe to them. Chow told everyone to stay quiet as noises could lead the zombies to them. Since it was too dangerous to get back to the car and call for help, Chow said that he had come up with his own plan. The man turned his gaze at a haystack, saying that he could use it to make a signal for help. The group waited until the sun went down, then burned the haystack in the hope that the burning object would send out signals to the police. The little girl asked her mom if the zombies would break into and find their whereabouts. Officer Chow quickly reassured her, saying the police would arrive and save the four of them. Chow then asked the woman what had happened to the civilians. The woman said a few days ago everyone in town suddenly acted bizarre after they ate a pig. That day, the dog of the village chief had bitten a pig to death. The pig owner demanded the village chief to pay for it as he wanted to settle the argument peacefully. The village chief agreed to the man's demand, thinking that the pig was only bitten to death by a dog and would be a waste if he dumped it. The chief decided to cook it as he gathered everyone for a feast. The people in the village were all invited to his house as they feasted on the pork. All of a sudden, they behaved oddly as they fought and killed each other. It was fortunate for the woman and her family to avoid the horrific incident as they didn't come to the gathering. Bing abruptly held out as he saw the rescue team arrived. They finally saw the signal for help and brought the whole team to save the survivors. Many police cars had arrived at the scene. The soldiers were all equipped with antivirus equipment. They used tranquilizer guns to shoot at the infected. The zombies, after being hit with the bullets, somehow returned to normal as their eyes were no longer red. The two policemen, the woman and the little girl were all safely rescued. Later, the police imposed a blockade around the whole town for decontamination and disinfection. Now, at the military hospital, Officer Chow had fully recovered after 2 days of treatment. All the wounds on his arms and legs had been antiseptic and bandaged. Chow expressed his gratitude as the research center had developed a cure, or else he would be infected with a strange virus. But the examiner said it was not over yet. He told Chow to follow him to the morgue as he wanted to show him something. The man removed the veil of a corpse, then told Chow to look at the bite and then the dead body. He was aghast to see the wound on it. This was the man that was first infected with the virus. However, the bite on his neck had a strange looking shape. Chow asked the doctor if the bite mark was from the missing mummy. The doctor looked at Chow, saying it was a warning sign that must not be ignored. This man had indeed been bitten by the mummy, which meant that the virus was originating from that. Inside the mouth, the canines have grown long, which served as proof that he had transformed into a vampire after being bitten. Chow told the doctor that if the process for cure development was delayed, there would be a lot of people, including him, being turned into bloodthirsty monsters. The doctor agreed with his statements. It was fortunate that they had stopped in time, or else it would be a doom to humanity. The next day at the police station, Mr. Liu once again became angry as the press still reported news about the missing of the ancient mummy. Later, he ordered the police officers to find out the mummy at all costs and burned it as it was the only way to make things right. As Officer Chow walked out of the room, he had a feeling of worry. There must have been someone behind the mysterious disappearance of the ancient corpse, and for that reason, he couldn't make certainty of anything until he found the mummy.